So I came on into Mike's position back in January, and the first thing when I got there was, hey, you heard of the Ozark Chinquapin? I said, well, we tried to plant a couple at General Watkins on the Crowley's Ridge there, but the soil was just too good, they just kept petering out and sprouting back. So I was like, they're not going to grow out here, all we got is rocks. But they do grow. Another thing I was tasked with was limiting our food plot regime. There was nearly 50 food plots out there, and I was told to knock those back considerably. So I got thinking, what can we put back into these food plots? Do I put native grasses? Do I put oak trees? Do I put fruit trees? What can I put back in there? Well, I got talking to Mike and Steve and decided let's try to put Ozark Chinquapins in these food plots. My bosses came to me and said, hey, we got to get rid of food plots. Our priorities are reforestation and putting native species back on the ground. Well, I checked both those boxes with the Ozark Chinquapin. Also, Mike came to me and said, I have 125 seedlings for you. Do you have a place for them? I said, I don't know how many four plots I can create out here that to fill those 125. So I was like, food plots, these will work perfect. It'll also help Mike and myself in the future learn about these trees, learn about their rootstock, learn about how we can translocate them, and if they can be translocated from a high fertilized soil into these bony rocky areas, like the trail conditions create. And also, those Ozark Chinquapin having that high source of protein, wildlife attracted, no doubt, even though traditional hunters might think, well, they're just trees, they're not going to produce any wildlife. The wildlife know they're there, and Steve's got pictures to prove it. So how do we accomplish this? This was actually put in the traditional plot, but we basically walked out some food plots, found ones that had a lot of rock, not too much the food plot traditional, that usually had more of a south-facing aspect to where they could track the sun, and then basically put a 25 or a 5x5 or a 6x4 type structure out there with 20 by 20 foot spacings. And 20 by 20 foot spacings may seem like a lot, but that will actually help us be able to mow these food plots, to be able to maintain them to where we can go in, be hands-on with them, avoid the seed ticks, and be able to, if these trees do grow, into be able to get equipment in there to where we can collect the seed out of them without having to shoot them out with a rifle or get a chainsaw out and or a pole saw, actually, using a chainsaw, but to clip the seedlings off. So. There was also quite a bit of logical thinking that happened. There's potential for mower damage, which sadly already happened. My assistant went out and planted them, 25 trees for me. Well, he ran out of flagging and only flagged out the corners of these where he planted them. Well, my technician went out to mow the food plots down, and he thought only the four corners were where the trees were planted. And he came up to me and he's like, Preston, I gotta tell you something. And I said, what's up? He goes, you're gonna be mad. And I said, surely it's not that bad. And he said, I mowed over 25 of your Ozark Chinquapins. And I said, oh no. Oh no. But amazingly, 72% of those Chinquapins resprouted. And I mean, they were clipped off probably 2 to 3 inches tall. And there's some that are already back 6-8 inches tall. So that just shows the resilience of this tree. And it may even be something to think about, because the 4 that he didn't mow over on the corners that were marked, only 1 of those survived. So it's kind of an interesting thought. These food plots were the poor sites that we had, but they were still food plots. They'd been fertilized year after year after year, cultivated year after year after year. So talking to Steve, talking to Mike, these aren't the best sites. There was green duff layer all throughout it. We tried to bear up the soil the best we could, but knowing that these orchard grasses and clovers were going to come back, it still worried me that these trees wouldn't do as well. But as of this summer, I believe about 80% of them that we planted are still alive. So that's just about the average for, I was talking to Mike on the way here, that for an average seedling source or anything that we have. There's also an easier potential for the blight to spread. This year we had our first tree out there come up, start to show signs of the blight. However, this was a tree that we have looked at and thought about for a couple times. I know Mike had thought about cutting it down, Steve thought about cutting it down, because it just did not look like a normal Ozark Chinquapin. But for some reason it kept on going, kept on going. Well, this year it showed up with blight, so we're going to see how it reacts to it this spring, and then probably likely remove it from the herd. Potential benefits, like I've been saying, it'll be easier to monitor, and for Mike to get to do research for any of the nursery benefits. It'll be easier to collect nuts. It'll be easier just to drive our trucks up there, shake them off, get them in our truck, get them to the nursery as fast as we can. It meets the goals of the department. It makes my bosses happy. Makes my bosses happy. I'm happy. Nobody's complaining there. The high wildlife value. That's important for Dent County. Dent County is an area that thrives on deer hunting. First deer season out there this year, there was over 100 camps on a 13,000 acre area. I couldn't believe the amount of people that use that area. It's an easy site to plant. Although we did have to get the auger out because the rootstock was so big. The smaller ones we were able just to take a double bar and just traditionally plant it real easy, nice and quick. Also, it makes pollen transfer and sunlight tracking a lot easier, which will in turn hopefully help the trees grow faster and produce seeds quicker.
Here, and so my question is, when do you think that we'll be able to start putting more of these out there for the public? It sounds like so far so good with the trees that you've been planting, so what's your thoughts on that?
Usually we have to have at least 30,000 or 4,000 seedlings of certain species before we make it available to the public. Less than that, black chokeberry is one. Last year we did our estimate. We thought we were going to have like 6,000 of them. We put it in the catalog. We got actually lifting. We only had 2,000. Don't know what happened to them, but within basically about 2 weeks, all the black chokeberry was gone. And here's our catalog sitting out there. And it's online for 9 months, and we're out of them already. So if you don't have enough seedlings to make them available long enough, we usually don't put them out there. Butternut is another fine example. We do grow butternut there. Usually we have only a few hundred of those. We keep those back for state land plantings, master naturalist groups, and so forth, to try to keep them just along those lines. So we have to have several thousand of the seedlings before we can make it available to the public.
Awesome. What you're about to hear next is pretty interesting and amazing, and it's something that's never been done before, and so go ahead.
So it looked like you were harvesting those pods and they were still green. When do you harvest those pods?
We like to wait until they're at least partially open. Preston mentioned the other day, we were talking about it. One day they just barely cracking open, the next day they are fully open, and that seed is just dropping out. So you can't wait till the entire cluster is open. You will lose seed on the ground. Once it starts hitting the ground, the wildlife don't know about them yet. They're not used to it. All these years being without them. So we gained some years, we got some seed and then to compete with the wildlife. This year, as Preston was saying, they're going in to collect the nuts to get it. There was deer droppings all over the place, and there are turkeys and so forth. So the wildlife have found them. So you can't wait till they're all open, because you're going to lose a lot of seeds. So you've got to be out there monitoring almost every day. And when you see that it's barely starting to crack open a little bit, you'll be collecting. And we'll see, like I said, these ones of the seeds that we have with the burrs completely on that seed, if they will still grow and produce a seedling, they'll be fine. So, but that's yet to be discovered. We'll see.
And if I can add something to that, and what she brought up is, you know this, I know this, we've been working on it, and so for those of you that don't know this, like you're probably confused, why are you trying to open up the burrs and get them, why don't you let them fall? Well, Chris Wyatt told me, he said, Steve, we got a great big chicken in here loaded full of nuts, should be able to get all we want. And he said, I'm going to go back and check it in a few days. And he went back to that tree a little bit later, and I think he said you got 7 nuts off of it. And they will pick, in like 1 day or 2 days, they will pick it clean. And I'm talking deer on the ground and the squirrels will not leave them. They'll run out to the ends of the branches, but unlike being in a hickory tree or a mulberry tree where they'll leave, they'll get away from you. These wild squirrels will hang on the end of the branch, and then if you go on this side of the drip line, then they'll come and run back and they'll try to get them. It is like a cartoon on how they try to get these. So if you're not there when they're ready to go, they will take them. And that's just the way they do. I mean,
What kind of month are you talking about?
it's what now?
What month?
Well, that's a good question. And so the area and that answer to that keeps changing. So the more we learn on this, there's a lot of pages still waiting to be filled about it. I used to tell people the month of September before the white oaks drop, that's when they do it. Well, now though, we've got, let's see, that one tree number 44 that different Baker had, that tree has started making a lot of nuts this year. And they didn't start being ripe until the end of the first week of October. And I still had pictures of deer eating Chinquapins underneath of that tree all the way up almost to November. And so it depends. All of them are a little bit different. The size of the nuts, how they deal with the blight. There's a lot of variance on it. But I used to think it's just September only. And about probably, don't you think about the third week of September is probably about peak? Does that sound like, yeah,
I would say the majority is down for September.
and then we've had sometimes, I'm trying to remember who was with us up on one plot in Missouri, but we had some ripe, it's like the 4th of September, and I mean, they were ready to be picked then, you know, and I wasn't ready for that then. I didn't know they were going to be that ready. So, and they were ahead of the trees down in Arkansas, and so this area above the glade too, so. But I didn't mean to take that away. I just want to let everybody know that, you know, it may be confusing when what we're talking about, trying to go to all this trouble to deburr them. If you wait till then, it's like too late. Like he said, in one day's time, they can open up. And once that thing is completely open like that, there's about 100% percentage that nut will germinate and go ahead and make a tree when it does that.
I'd say if you're not used to the trees in your area, start looking around the 1st of September and start watching them. So, kind of checking that out.
2 questions. First, when you store your nuts in bags, are the bags fenestrated?
No.
They're not ventilated at all. And when Steve mails out our stuff, he tells us to open them up and breathe in them once a week.
Yep.
Is that artificial respiration?
Well, part of it is to make sure that it's getting mold in there.
Right.
Now, I haven't had an issue with that. The only time I had an issue with the mold on it was the ones that we got the tips damaged. But the only one that, and then last year the seed was too dry, it didn't do anything at all. This year, we're going to see, because basically none of these seeds were damaged. I've got some that we get in the ground, we'll plant them this fall, we'll hold some to the spring. So we'll see if those attract any mold. If they do, the other side that I can do, like I said, we have sphagnum moss that we plant to pack the trees in, the roots, that inhibits mold growth. So if nothing else, we can also put some sphagnum moss in with the trees, or the seed rather, and see what that does. I would, myself, personally, if these seedlings work, we'll plant them in the fall of the year.
Yeah, that sounds good. Second question, how do you harvest the burrs?
Basically, pull them off the trees, they pull right off. The whole cluster is
Some of the trees are pretty tall.
Yep.
That's 420.
And on top of the truck, any which way you can imagine to get them out.
Will they break off easily?
Most of them do.
Not.
Yeah, most of them do.
Ideally, in the wild, here's what happens typically, and the burr will be closed, it starts open up, and as it opens up like this, then the nut will drop, and then I'd say maybe after roughly a week or so, maybe more or less, then that whole cluster of burrs, like you see over here, will fall. That's typically what they'll do. But there is so much predation on wildlife on them that it gets interrupted. I mean, it's a common. I'll watch crows hover and pluck nuts out of a spiked burr, you know. And so it's just unreal. But ordinarily though, those will open up and they'll drop. And see, what we're dealing with is they're still pretty rare, the nuts are. And so in historic times, like that one slideshow we had here, you had millions of nuts, millions of nuts. And so you would see them on the ground, and so many would get piled up, and you could shovel them up, you know, with a shovel. Now, though, we're just now starting to get to the point where there's starting to be more and more of them. And the most I've ever seen on the ground in my life was this 511, and then 540 deer would show up. You know, that's the way it happens. So that's what you're dealing with. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Yes.
I have a question. I used to live in Missouri and I've been to looking, I think I bought like 200 trees and a lot of them did live. But now I'm in Arkansas, and if you're going to sell those trees, can somebody from Arkansas buy it?
We are one of the few state nurseries that can actually sell outside of our borders. So yes.
I guarantee he can sell them because I've got
Like state of Indiana cannot sell outside the state border, Iowa can. Of course, there's a nursery here in Arkansas as well, trees is very good soothing. I believe they can sell outside their borders, but of course they are ready to be a chicken. Yes. Yes.
How does the blight spread? Because you noticed that there was blight on one of the trees and you decided to leave it there to see what happened. And so that plot of 25 trees was not totally blight resistant, but it's a test plot, so if it does spread, it's not a big deal. But if you were to start growing trees and you noticed you had one that wasn't blight resistant, do you take it out immediately? Like as an individual, or if we plant them at the state park, does that thing need to go now?
Well, that was only in the four tree plots.
Right, and it's a test, more or less
Right.
a test plot.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to establish the tree at Bull Shoals, for instance, and we end up with a tree that we notice that's starting to have blight, do we take it out now?
I probably would. I know what Steve's recommendation. He didn't want to put all of his seedlings in kind of one area in case something came along and destroyed the area. So this was kind of another area to kind of maintain the genetics of a lot of the trees that we had. Tim Smith, number 10, for whatever reason sticks out in my mind. I think that was the one that was taken out by the power line, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's well represented though.
But now we have it in so many different areas, so even though we lost that tree, we have the genetics of it. Of course, from there, he's been able to do this cross-pollination and actually improve the blight resistance. So the initial trees that were put out in Indian Trail was just to maintain the genetics of this tree. And since then, we've gone a lot further. Of course, he's got the better quality trees. But
Right.
And then one that we've got, I believe it may be like a cross with the Allegheny, because the burrs on it, the first year it produced burrs, I didn't think they were pollinated because they were so small. The next year, same thing. And by chance, I pulled one down, I cut it open, here's a full-size nut, but this burr was tiny. And the leaves don't look right, the foliage is weird looking. I believe it's probably a cross with the Allegheny. That's why we talked about taking out. Now it has the blight, so the question is, okay, how will it do with the blight? Will it kill it? Will it outgrow it? That's why I think
I was
The other trees in the plot.
Yeah, since we had talked, I found out the answer to this
Okay.
too. And so I've got a friend of mine down from North Louisiana, South Arkansas, and so I sent him some seed that we have from here. And remember before I said there's a difference from north of the Arkansas River and south, and it's like leaf morphology. And so the leaves tend to be small. But back check the records, and that thing has 4 capital T's. It is an Ozark Chinquapin. So just like the Grand Canyon, where you have squirrels on both sides of it, and they're separated by 1 mile distance, they look completely different. They're separated by a river. The Arkansas River, above it, the leaves are a lot larger, the stems are larger, the trees still grow big, but the burrs on them look like they're struggling to cover that nut.
Yeah.
And so all the ones, I got to look at my notes, all the ones south of the Arkansas River, that's what you're seeing. It is an actual Ozark Chinquapin. And so, but going back to what you said about the blight, so our approach is, in some ways, we kind of welcome the blight. It's there, it's everywhere. It goes through cycles, it's carried by the wind, insects, skunks can dig up a tree and they can stir it. It's everywhere. It's carried by insects, by wind, by birds. And so what our approach is, we want to know which ones actually can handle the blight. And so all the ones that we're dealing with now, that we're putting all the research into for blight resistance, they demonstrate levels of the parent trees do. So in a heavily blighted forest, you've got, like from here to Mike, you've got a tree dying of blight. And here's a tree here, real large, making nuts, that shows no evidence of it. Or maybe it gets the blight and it's hanging on for 10 years and still making nuts spread those will die, maybe 80% of them will die of the blight. But then the other 20% though, they're not dying. So there's something going on there. And so that's why we do the breeding the way we do. And to answer your question though, if it was me and I had one on there like that, just to play it safe, I'd take some rubberized undercoating, spray those places. You may have already done that. I didn't get a patch on that, works real good. So you can temporarily stave it off and help the tree heal over. And the blight doesn't grow in the ground because of the microbes in the soil. You can do a mud pack on it, but it's easier to just take a can of that real thick rubberized spray from Walmart automotive department and just spray that place. It'll smother it, it'll kill it, and the tree will heal over.
Well, and now that I asked the question, I kind of realized that if we plant some trees and blight shows up in part of them, that it's probably good to know now which ones are actually blight resistant than to get it out of there right now and have it reappear again. You know, you might as well know now.
Yep.
And again, part of the thing too with the trees that I sent out last year, the door prize and all, these are the stuff we're trying. You know, we're kind of working with the seeds, trying to figure out how to store this stuff and how to process the seed. So it's either you take all the seeds and throw them in a compost pile because they're not really highly blight resistant, or to at least get them out of the landscape, try to keep the genetics going. Obviously the trees that they're coming from, most of them are living, you know, they're living at 7 to 10 years of age, 11 years of age, and all but one, I mean, are blight resistant. So they haven't got the blight yet, and they're basically, you know, 10 years old. So that's pretty good for some of these seedlings. So, you know, if you get these seedlings, they last for 10 years before they get the blight, and you still get nuts off them, you're still getting the advantage of it. You're still helping to perpetuate the species. And if these trees, you've got, you know, 25 seedlings, and you can get 20 that survive, and they're crossing now they're kind of building up a higher blight resistance. So even on your own place, you kind of get a little bit of blight resistance out there. But just like I said, instead of throwing the compost pile, I'd rather get them out in the landscape and get them in folks' hands, you know, and do it that way. So.
Another unique difference, and I didn't tell about this on the slideshow, but there's a guy in Lawrence County, Missouri. He said, I've got the only 2 surviving Ozark Chinquapins in the whole county, and he showed them to me. And I thought, what an ugly thing. And it was a big cluster of stump sprouts that were, some of them were like as tall as a ceiling. And from, I'd say that side of the screen to this side, that's how far they were spread. So you had diseased, dead sprouts in proximity to green ones. Is that cycle of blight. But what he did though, he took brush hog and brush hogged around them. And the 2 were like, you know, maybe 50 or 60 feet apart or less. And so they were getting plenty of sunlight, and they were getting plenty of pollen, and they were making so many nuts. And he said he just enjoys watching the wildlife. And that was, at that time, that had been going on since the 1950s. So for decades, those trees had continually been doing this, but they had plenty of pollen, plenty of sun, and they were producing a bonus of nuts. And I could not get over it. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's horrible. But then if that happens, and we talked about this, what they're going to do is just keep bush hogging around it, keep the canopy open, and make sure, you know, of course, you got pollinators around, and it's still a good wildlife food, and still, you know, it'll outbeat anything else out there. And so we're changing our mind a little bit about some of these things as we go. So, like I said, the page is still waiting to be filled. So check back with us later on.